The nuns get pregnant one by one, and the truth shocks everyone.
Hello everyone, enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
The St. Benedict Monastery, nestled deep in a remote mountainous region of the United States, had long been known for its strict discipline and unwavering devotion. The nuns there dedicated their entire lives to prayer, adhering to God's commandments, without any contact with the outside world except for permitted charitable work. Everything proceeded in sacred order until one fateful morning when the real nightmare began. The chapel bell rang, signaling the morning service. The nuns, dressed in simple black habits, silently entered the rows of wooden pews, their eyes lowered in prayer. Mother Superior Mary stood before the altar, her gaze stern yet filled with love. But just as she began reciting the prayers, a sharp gasp broke the silence. Sister Lucy, only 22 years old, suddenly collapsed. The entire monastery was thrown into shock. Lucy. Another nun, Sister Agnes, rushed forward in panic to support her. Lucy was pale, her breath labored, one hand clutching her stomach as if in pain. The other nuns murmured anxiously, some rushing off to seek help. Mother Superior Mary quickly stepped forward, her face etched with worry. Take her to the infirmary immediately. Sister Anna and Sister Teresa promptly assisted Lucy, guiding her away as the rest of the nuns whispered in concern. Everyone sensed that something was terribly wrong, but no one dared to say it aloud. Half an hour later, Dr. Raymond, the physician summoned by the monastery, emerged from the infirmary. He was a middle-aged doctor with years of experience working with churches and monasteries. But today, his face was ashen, as if he himself couldn't believe what he was about to say. Mother Superior. Raymond hesitated, then lowered his voice. Lucy shows signs of pregnancy. Mary froze. That's impossible. She spoke slowly, her eyes turning cold. No one in this monastery could have committed such a sin. I thought so too, Raymond sighed, wiping sweat from his forehead. But the signs are undeniable. Her belly has slightly protruded, and she exhibits symptoms consistent with pregnancy. The air in the room seemed to freeze. We must examine all the nuns, Raymond continued. Mother Superior Mary remained silent for a long time before finally nodding. The news about Lucy spread like wildfire. And as the other nuns underwent examinations, the subsequent findings were even more shocking. Not only Lucy but at least 5 other nuns showed similar signs. Mother Superior Mary felt as if she were trapped in a nightmare. These young, pure nuns who had dedicated their lives to serving God, how could they be pregnant? No man had ever set foot in the monastery. This was impossible. Yet somehow, it had happened. Outside the monastery, rumors spread. Some villagers whispered about strange occurrences within the monastery. Stories began to emerge. Some claimed the monastery was cursed, while others, more malicious, suggested the nuns had committed grave sins. The scandal soon reached the ears of Bishop Gregory. Gregory was a powerful man, with a stern face and piercing eyes. He prided himself on upholding the purity and honor of the Church, but he was also known as an unforgiving traditionalist who tolerated no scandals. Upon hearing the news from St. Benedict Monastery, he immediately called an emergency meeting. This is unacceptable. His voice boomed within the cathedral. We cannot allow a scandal like this to disgrace the Church. A young priest, Father Alphonse, hesitantly spoke up. But Your Excellency, we don't yet know the full story. Perhaps there is something unusual at play here. Gregory narrowed his eyes. There is nothing unusual, only that these nuns have broken their vows. But if they are innocent? There is no such thing, Gregory interrupted. We will go to the monastery immediately. If anyone is guilty, they will face due punishment. Hours later, a procession of carriages arrived at St. Benedict Monastery. As Gregory and his senior clergy stepped out, the atmosphere grew heavy. The nuns stood in rows in the monastery courtyard, heads bowed in fear. Mother Superior Mary came forward to greet them, maintaining her composed demeanor, though inside, turmoil raged. "Welcome, Your Excellency," she said in a measured tone. "I trust you have come to uncover the truth." Gregory scanned the group of trembling nuns. "The truth is already clear, Mother Mary. Now, only judgment remains." Within a day, news of the scandal at St. Benedict Monastery had spread throughout the entire region. Outside the monastery gates, people began to gather. At first, they only cast curious glances, but soon, whispers turned into murmurs, then into anger. "They are sinners," a man shouted. "God will punish these liars." A group of elderly women, once devout supporters of the monastery, now looked upon the nuns with contempt. "We trusted them, and now they have disgraced the Lord." The first stones were thrown at the monastery gates. Mother Superior Mary stood on the balcony, gazing down at the screaming crowd. She knew the worst was yet to come. This was only the beginning of the nightmare. The gates of St. Benedict Monastery remained tightly shut, but outside, the crowd continued to scream. Small stones were repeatedly hurled against the wooden gates, producing an incessant thud that was both grating and ominous. Curses and accusations rang out without end. Inside, the atmosphere grew even heavier as Bishop Gregory officially ordered the isolation of all the suspected nuns. "From this moment on, no one is allowed to leave the monastery." His voice was cold. "We must uncover the truth." Mother Superior Mary stood before the bishop, her hands gripping the hem of her dark robe tightly. "Your Excellency, I believe something is not right." Her voice remained calm but resolute. "We have committed no sin. My nuns could not have done this." Gregory smirked. "Impossible? Then where did these signs of pregnancy come from, Mother Mary?" Mary fell silent, for even she could not explain it. "Begin re-examining every single one of them." Gregory turned to Dr. Raymond. "This time, no one is to be overlooked." The nuns were gathered into a large hall, where they were ordered to undergo medical examinations under the watchful eyes of Gregory and a group of senior priests. Some trembled, trying to pray, but were sharply commanded to remain silent. "Why must we endure this humiliation?" Sister Anna, an elderly nun, was on the verge of tears. "We are innocent," Sister Teresa grasped her hand, trying to reassure her. But no one was listening. One by one, they were dragged into the examination room. The youngest nun, Sister Helen, not even 20 years old, was so terrified that she fainted when the doctor touched her hand. Sister Beatrice sobbed uncontrollably as she was interrogated about something she herself did not understand. "Speak the truth, and you will be forgiven," an old priest urged. "But I have done nothing wrong," Beatrice cried. Gregory crossed his arms over his chest, observing from a distance. Every plea from the nuns only convinced him further that they were hiding something. After several hours of examination, 12 nuns were confirmed to have symptoms of pregnancy. When the news leaked outside, the townspeople's rage reached its peak. In front of the monastery gates, dozens of people gathered, carrying banners with horrifying accusations. "Sinners of God. We have been deceived. Betrayers of faith." Some threw rotten eggs at the gates, while others held torches, threatening to set the monastery on fire. "They have defiled the church," a man roared. "Bring them out. We demand justice." Inside, the nuns huddled in the chapel, their tears falling endlessly. Mother Superior Mary stood before the statue of Christ, her heart heavy. She had tried to protect them, but now, the monastery was no longer a safe place. As the mob grew more uncontrollable, Gregory made a ruthless decision. "If you confess, things may be more lenient." He scanned the nuns with a piercing gaze. A piece of paper was placed before them. "Sign this. Confess that you have sinned." Sister Isabella, a gentle and quiet nun, burst into tears. "But, we did nothing wrong." Gregory sighed, signaling to another priest. Anyone who refuses to sign will be permanently expelled from the church. This threat struck at the nuns' greatest fear. Some began to waver. Sister Agnes, trembling, picked up the pen, her tears staining the paper. "Don't sign." Mother Superior Mary intervened. But it was too late. Some nuns, out of fear, despair, and the terror of being cast out, signed their names. The others, though yet to sign, began to fall into overwhelming panic. Night fell, but no one could sleep. The nuns were locked in their rooms, forbidden to step outside. Mother Superior Mary, who had led the monastery for over 20 years, had never felt more powerless. In the darkness, she heard someone sobbing. "I'm so scared." She turned around. It was Sister Helen, the youngest among them, still trembling from the day's events. "What will happen to us, Mother Mary?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Mother Superior could not answer. She had no answer. For the first time in her life, she felt as though she had lost faith in justice. While the nuns were drowning in despair, Gregory and his followers were satisfied. "Everything is going according to plan," Gregory smiled. "Soon, we will cleanse this monastery of liars." A priest beside him nodded. "The public is on your side. No one believes those nuns anymore." Gregory took a sip of wine, gazing out at the tightly shut monastery gates. He had seized complete control, just one more step. But even in the deepest darkness, a glimmer of hope still flickered. Mother Superior Mary still had one last path left. She quietly wrote a letter, carefully sealing it in an envelope before handing it to Sister Anna, the only nun still allowed to leave. "Take this, to Father John," she whispered. Sister Anna trembled. "Do you think he can help us?" Mary wasn't sure. But she had to try. Because if she didn't, St. Benedict Monastery would be forever stained by a sin they had never committed. Outside the monastery, the crowd grew larger by the minute. The shouts and curses never ceased. The monastery gate shook violently, as if it was about to be torn down. Torches blazed in the night, reflecting off the furious faces. Meanwhile, inside the monastery, the atmosphere had never been heavier or more oppressive. The nuns were locked in their rooms, forbidden to leave. Mother Superior Mary had been stripped of her authority. Now, everything was entirely in Bishop Gregory's hands. The next morning, an emergency meeting was held within the monastery grounds. Gregory sat at the central seat, surrounded by a group of senior priests, all wearing stern expressions. "We cannot allow this monastery to continue bringing shame to the church," Gregory said gravely. "I propose the expulsion of all nuns who show signs of pregnancy." One priest, Father Stephen, hesitated. "But, could there have been a mistake in the diagnosis?" Gregory narrowed his eyes, clearly displeased. "A mistake? All 12 of them have the same symptoms. What further proof do you need?" Father Stephen pressed his lips together, not daring to speak further. Another priest, Father Vincent, spoke up. "I agree. If we don't act swiftly, the church's reputation will be ruined." Gregory smiled in satisfaction. "Then it's decided," he declared. "All those guilty will be expelled." When news of this decision spread, the mob outside grew even more furious. They lit candles and raised banners with terrifying messages. "Expel them all. This monastery no longer belongs to God. They are frauds." The pounding on the gates became more violent. Inside, the nuns trembled. Some prayed in desperate whispers, while others wept silently in fear. Sister Beatrice murmured, "We're going to die here." Sister Isabella held her tightly. "God will not abandon us." But even as she spoke those words, she wasn't sure if she believed them herself. That night, a tragedy occurred. Sister Helen, the youngest of them all, could no longer endure the pressure. "There's nothing we can do." Her voice quivered. "They're going to kill us." Sister Teresa tried to reassure her. No. We will find a way. But it was too late. Helen lunged forward and slammed her head against the stone wall, collapsing to the ground. Helen! The nuns screamed, rushing to catch her. Blood trickled from Helen's forehead. Her eyes blurred. Mother Superior Mary stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Dear God, we cannot let this continue. When Gregory heard the news about Helen, he showed no sympathy. That was her choice, he said coldly. Father Alphonse, the youngest among the council, could no longer contain himself. Do you not see that something is terribly wrong? A nun took her own life because of this oppression. Gregory shot him a sharp, blade-like glance. She was weak. And the weak have no place in the church. Alphonse clenched his fists, but he dared not say anything more. The nuns were locked away in isolation. Less than an hour later, a new order was issued. All the nuns showing signs of pregnancy were confined to a separate room, forbidden from communicating with anyone. The door was bolted shut. Darkness swallowed them whole. Sister Agnes whispered, "They're treating us like criminals." Sister Anna bit her lip. "We are not guilty." But no one listened. Even in such a dire situation, Mother Superior Mary refused to give up. She knew there was only one person who could help them, Father John. But how could she reach him? As night fell, she called Sister Anna over. "You're still allowed outside, aren't you?" Anna nodded. "Take this letter to Father John. Don't let anyone see you." Sister Anna took the letter, fear tightening in her chest. If she was caught, they would face severe punishment. But they had no other choice. Sister Anna slipped outside, crossing the monastery courtyard, where guards patrolled the grounds. She trembled, her heart pounding. A light flickered. A priest was approaching. Anna pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. The figure passed by, unaware of her presence. She continued running, reaching the side gate, slipping through the narrow opening, and vanishing into the night. She had to find Father John. Because this was their last chance to be saved. Darkness engulfed St. Benedict Monastery. The angry chants of the crowd outside still echoed through the thick stone walls, mingling with the howling wind. Fear seeped into every corner, but in a hidden passage, Sister Anna was running. She clutched Mother Superior Mary's letter tightly, her heart pounding. One small mistake, and she would be caught, then their last hope would be lost forever. Slipping through the side gate, she followed the narrow path leading toward the nearest village, where Father John often visited. But just as she stepped beyond the monastery walls, a voice called out behind her. "Where are you going?" Sister Anna froze and turned around. A figure stood under the moonlight, Father Vincent. Father Vincent was one of the priests in the church council. He was not as ruthless as Gregory, but neither was he brave enough to openly oppose the bishop's authority. Anna swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. "I just needed some fresh air," she said carefully. Vincent narrowed his eyes and stepped closer. "At a time like this?" His voice carried suspicion. "I think you're carrying something." Anna took a step back, gripping the letter tightly. "Please, Father, don't stop me," she pleaded. Vincent sighed, locking eyes with her. For a brief moment, his gaze no longer held suspicion, only hesitation. "You're going to see Father John, aren't you?" Anna stiffened. She couldn't lie. After a tense silence, Vincent suddenly turned away, his voice low. "Go." Anna was stunned, but there was no time to ask questions. She bowed her head in gratitude, then ran swiftly into the night. Inside the monastery, Mother Superior Mary had been completely isolated. Her room was guarded day and night, no one was allowed to see her. Gregory wanted her silenced because he knew she was the only one still resisting him. Father Alphonse, the youngest priest in the council, secretly found a way to meet her. When he slipped into Mary's room, he spoke quickly. "Mother Superior, Gregory has convinced nearly the entire council. If no miracle happens, you will be removed from your position." Mary nodded, but her eyes remained steadfast. "Have faith in the truth, Father Alphonse. Justice is not dead yet." Alphonse pressed his lips together as if he wanted to say more, but in the end, he left in silence. The next day, in a public gathering at the monastery, Gregory officially denounced Mary in front of all the nuns and priests. Standing on the elevated platform, his voice was sharp as a blade. "Mother Superior Mary's weak leadership has brought chaos to this monastery. Mary was forced to stand before everyone, but she remained calm and composed. I do not believe my nuns have done anything wrong," she declared firmly. Gregory scoffed. "Then tell me, Mother Mary, why do they all show signs of pregnancy? Can you explain that?" Mary remained silent. She had no proof, but she knew something was deeply wrong. "If you have any honor left," Gregory continued, "you will admit your failure and leave this monastery." The nuns wept silently, but none dared to speak out. The truth was, Gregory had nearly won. Inside the monastery, some nuns began to waver. Sister Teresa whispered to Sister Beatrice. "What if Bishop Gregory is right?" Beatrice's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I mean, if some nun had broken their vows, then maybe." Beatrice grabbed Teresa's hand tightly. "Listen to me. Don't let yourself be deceived. This is not our fault." But doubt had already taken root. Gregory had achieved his goal. He didn't need the nuns to confess. He only needed them to doubt themselves. 3 days later, the church council made its final decision. All 12 nuns were to be expelled from the monastery, never to be accepted into any religious order again. "They will be cast out tomorrow," Gregory announced. Some nuns burst into tears, some prayed, but no one could change anything. Mother Superior Mary closed her eyes and whispered, "Lord, please save us." But no miracle occurred. In a small village 20 miles from the monastery, Father John read the letter from Mother Superior. When he reached the last line, his face turned pale. "My God!" he whispered. Sister Anna trembled as she stood before him. "Do you believe us?" John lifted his head, his eyes sharp. "I believe." He stood up, determination flashing in his eyes. "We must save them before it's too late." That night, while the nuns were locked in their rooms, the monastery gates tightly shut, and Gregory reveling in his victory, Father John set out for St. Benedict Monastery. But would he arrive in time to prevent the tragedy? Dawn at St. Benedict Monastery did not bring the usual peace. On the contrary, it signaled a catastrophe. Today was the day of judgment. 12 nuns were forced to leave the monastery, never to return, never to receive the protection of the church, and would have to face the fury of the outside world. They had nowhere to go, no one to protect them, and worse, their honor had been completely trampled. The chapel bells tolled, not to call for prayer, but to announce the execution of the honor of these innocent nuns. Bishop Gregory stood at the monastery gate, hands clasped like a judge, looking down at those being escorted out. "You have betrayed God, betrayed the church," his voice rang out. "Now it is time for you to pay the price." Mother Superior Mary was forced to watch, despite having done everything in her power to stop this decision. She could not believe the church was allowing this to happen. Sister Beatrice sobbed, clutching her habit tightly. "We have done nothing wrong. Please let us explain." Gregory ignored her pleas. "You had your chance to confess, but you chose defiance." He gave a signal. The monastery gates opened. Outside, a crowd had already gathered. As the nuns stepped beyond the gate, a storm of rage erupted. "Traitors! God has cursed you. Get out of here." Stones were thrown. Sister Agnes threw herself in front of Sister Helen, but a rock struck her shoulder hard, causing her to collapse. Mother Superior Mary hurried forward, shielding her nuns. "Stop! They are innocent." But no one listened. A man splashed dirty water at them. An elderly woman, who once revered the monastery, now spat on the ground. "I used to believe in you, but you are nothing but frauds." Sister Beatrice choked on her sobs, looking back at the monastery one last time. They had lost everything. Amid the chaos, Gregory smiled in satisfaction. He had won. He had removed those who stood in his way, proven his power, and taken complete control of the monastery. Father Alphonse, the only one who dared to challenge him, stood frozen. "Do you feel no shame?" he whispered. Gregory glanced at him and scoffed. "Shame? I just saved the honor of the church." In the depths of despair, a figure appeared in the distance. Father John had arrived. Sister Anna, who had risked everything to deliver the letter to him, pressed herself against the gate, eyes filled with hope. But would he be in time to stop this tragedy? John strode toward the crowd, but Gregory's soldiers blocked his way. "I need to speak with the bishop immediately," he demanded. But the soldiers did not move. John was stopped right at the gate as the innocent nuns were thrown out of the monastery like criminals. 12 nuns were cast onto the streets, with no one to protect them. Gregory ordered the monastery gates to be shut, as if erasing their existence forever. Sister Helen trembled, her eyes filled with panic. "Where will we go?" Mother Superior Mary held her hand tightly, though she, too, was filled with uncertainty. "I don't know, but I will not leave you alone." They began walking, under the contemptuous gazes of the villagers. Though blocked, John did not give up. He stared intently at the tightly closed monastery gate, then turned to the soldiers. "This is a mistake." His voice was low, but full of authority. No one responded, but some of the soldiers began to waver. They had witnessed too much injustice, and in their hearts, their faith in Gregory was no longer absolute. John turned away, but his eyes burned with determination. He had a plan. Mother Superior Mary and the nuns walked for hours, no one uttering a word. When night fell, they found a small forest outside the village. "We will sleep here tonight," Mary said. Sister Agnes held Sister Helen close, both shivering from the cold. Sister Beatrice looked up at the sky, silent tears streaming down her face. They had lost everything. But they still had each other. Meanwhile, inside the monastery, Gregory was confident that everything was over. He sat at his desk, pouring himself a glass of wine, savoring his victory. But he did not know that within just a few days, a horrifying truth would be exposed. A cold wind swept through the forest where the 12 nuns were taking refuge. They huddled together, curling up beneath their thin habits, but the chill of the night was nothing compared to the pain and humiliation they were enduring. Sister Beatrice clutched her arms, trying to retain warmth, but her voice still trembled. "We can't live like this forever." Mother Superior Mary looked at her nuns. The faces that were once full of faith were now hollow, confused, and afraid. "I know," she said softly, yet her gaze remained resolute. "We will find the truth." But she also knew that without a miracle, they would never have the chance to return to the monastery. Meanwhile, at a small church in the neighboring village, Father John hastily flipped through an old medical book. He turned the pages with intense focus. Sister Anna sat across from him, her hands clenched tightly together. "Have you found anything?" John did not respond immediately. He turned another page, then suddenly stopped. His eyes widened. "Here it is." Anna leaned closer. "What did you find?" John tapped a line of text on the page. "All the symptoms the nuns experienced are not necessarily signs of pregnancy." Anna's eyes widened. "Then, what does that mean?" John took a deep breath, his voice lowering. They could be the result of an artificial hormone. Anna froze, her heart pounding. Are you saying someone deliberately poisoned them? John nodded slowly. We need to re-examine the test samples, but I believe this is a conspiracy. That very night, Father John secretly met with a doctor he trusted, Dr. Emil Grant, an honest man who was not under the church's influence. Emil carefully reviewed the symptoms of the nuns once again. After a moment of deep thought, he looked up, his expression grave. You were right, Father. These signs are not from a natural pregnancy. John felt a chill run down his spine. Could it be? Emil nodded slowly. If we test their blood, we might find evidence, but I need a blood sample from at least one of the nuns. In the forest, Mother Superior Mary listened to Father John's words as Sister Anna recounted them. She narrowed her eyes, her heart heavy. If they had truly been poisoned, who had done it? And for what purpose? But now, the most important thing was proving the truth. I will go, Mary said firmly. Sister Agnes gasped. Mother? But what if they capture you? If I don't go, we will never be vindicated. Father John secretly arranged for Mary to slip into the village under the protection of the townspeople who still believed in the monastery. They wrapped her in a thick cloak, concealing her habit. Before leaving, Mary held her nun's hands tightly. Pray for me. Sister Beatrice sobbed, embracing her. May God protect you. Mary nodded, then turned and walked into the darkness. At the monastery, Gregory was beginning to suspect that someone was working against him in secret. It seems, someone has yet to submit. He stared intently at Father Alphonse, the only one who dared to oppose him. Do you have something to say to me? Alphonse remained silent, but within him, a fire had begun to burn. When Mary arrived at Emil's house, she felt her heart pounding faster than usual. The doctor looked at her seriously, then gestured for her to enter. I need to take a blood sample. Mary nodded and extended her arm. As the needle pierced her skin, she closed her eyes and prayed. Because she knew that if this was discovered, they would not get a second chance. At the monastery, Gregory suddenly felt uneasy. Find Mary immediately. His soldiers spread out, searching for her everywhere. But by the time they reached the forest, she was already gone. 3 days later, the blood test results arrived. Father John held the paper in his trembling hands. Dr. Emil took a deep breath, his voice heavy with seriousness. None of them are pregnant. Sister Anna's mouth fell open. Then, what are those symptoms? They were caused by a hormone that was introduced into their bodies, through food or water. John felt his blood turn cold. Someone deliberately did this. And they knew exactly who was behind it all. As Father John read the results, a terrifying thought flashed through his mind. He looked up at Sister Anna, his voice lowering. Gregory manipulated everything to gain control of the monastery. Anna gasped. He did all of this just to overthrow Mother Superior. John nodded, his eyes burning with anger. Now that we have proof, we must bring it to light before it's too late. Just as John was preparing to return to the monastery, a villager ran up to him. They are hunting for you. John sprang to his feet. Outside, Gregory's knights had arrived, surrounding the village. Time was running out. Bishop Gregory's knights had surrounded the village. From the window of the room where Father John was staying, the flickering torches illuminated the soldiers' armor, reflecting in the dark night. Sister Anna trembled, clutching the edge of her robe. They came too fast. Father John looked down at the blood test results on the table, a rising sense of urgency filling his chest. We have to leave immediately. If we're captured, the truth will be buried forever. Dr. Emil nodded, quickly stuffing the crucial documents into a leather bag. I can help you escape through the back way. Outside, a commanding, cold voice rang out. "Open the door. By order of the bishop, we are conducting a search." They had no time left. Dr. Emile led them to a small door at the back of the house. "This path will lead you out of the village, through the pine forest." John gave a grateful nod, but before leaving, he grabbed Emile's hand. "You must leave immediately. If they suspect you, they will not spare you." Emile furrowed his brow but understood the real danger. "I will head south. Be careful, Father John." There was no time for further words. John and Sister Anna hurriedly slipped through the garden, vanishing into the darkness. Just as they disappeared, the front door was shattered. The knights stormed inside, their eyes filled with menace. "Dr. Emile, are you harboring anyone?" Emile kept his composure, though his heart pounded wildly. "I am merely a doctor. Why are you searching for me?" The commander narrowed his eyes, scanning the room, but there was no sign of John or Anna. They had escaped just in time. At the edge of the forest, Mother Superior Mary and the nuns remained hidden. No one spoke. Only the cold wind rustled through the trees, mixing with their silent prayers. Sister Beatrice huddled beside Sister Helen, whispering, "How long can we survive like this, always running?" Mary remained silent. She knew they could not live in the shadows forever, but returning would mean capture or worse. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the distance. Everyone tensed, ready to flee. But then, a familiar voice called out. "Mother Mary! I bring news." Sister Anna emerged from the darkness, followed closely by Father John, exhausted, but his eyes blazing. Mother Superior Mary rushed forward, gripping John's hands. "Did you find anything?" John didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled the blood test results from the leather bag. "They are not pregnant." The nuns gasped, unable to believe their ears. But why did we have those symptoms?" Sister Agnes stammered. John tightened his grip on the paper, his voice grim. "Someone introduced hormones into your food and water. This was a conspiracy." Stunned silence fell over the group. Mary inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "Then who is behind it?" John met her gaze. "Gregory." Meanwhile, at St. Benedict Monastery, Bishop Gregory remained at ease, as if his victory was already secured. Father Alphonse, though fearful, decided to confront him once more. "You have gone too far," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "You have destroyed an entire monastery for your own ambition." Gregory chuckled coldly. "You are too naive, Alphonse. This is not about ambition, it is about power." Alphonse clenched his fists. But Gregory was too powerful to overthrow alone. Without proof, there was nothing he could do. In the forest, Mother Superior Mary made her decision: she would confront Gregory. "We must return." Sister Helen gasped. "But, what if they capture us?" Mary looked around, her gaze unwavering. "We have evidence. If we do nothing, evil will triumph." Father John nodded. "I will go with you." They had steeled themselves for the final battle. As soon as Mary and John stepped out of the forest, one of Gregory's soldiers spotted them. His eyes widened in alarm, and he wheeled his horse around, galloping back toward the monastery at full speed. "Inform the bishop. They've returned." The next day, in front of St. Benedict Monastery, tension filled the air. Gregory stood on the monastery steps, hands clasped together, looking down at the nuns he had exiled. Mary stepped forward, her eyes locked on his. "I know what you have done, Gregory." Gregory raised an eyebrow but maintained his calm demeanor. "Oh. And how do you intend to prove that?" John held up the blood test results, his voice echoing. "We have proof." The crowd murmured, and the senior priests exchanged glances. A chill ran down Gregory's spine. He knew the game had changed. Father Alphonse, who had been silent until now, suddenly stepped forward. "If you are innocent, allow the church council to verify the truth." Gregory said nothing. Because he had no way out. Darkness had shrouded the monastery for too long, but now, light was beginning to shine through. Saint Benedict Monastery, once a symbol of sanctity and reverence, now stood at the center of a storm of justice and truth. Mother Superior Mary stood at the gates, facing Bishop Gregory, the man who had exiled her and her nuns. But this time, she was not alone. In Father John's hands was undeniable proof. "We have test results proving that the nuns were never pregnant," John declared. "They were poisoned with an artificial hormone." The entire monastery fell silent. The senior priests exchanged wary glances, doubt creeping into their expressions. Father Alphonse stepped forward, taking the results from John's hands. "If this is true, then who poisoned them?" John stared directly into Gregory's eyes. "You already know the answer, Bishop Gregory." Gregory was not one to surrender easily. He scoffed, his voice dripping with contempt. "How absurd. You are weaving a ridiculous tale to defend these sinful nuns." Mother Superior Mary stepped forward, her eyes sharp as a blade. "If they are guilty, let an independent doctor examine them. If you have nothing to hide, what are you afraid of?" Gregory was momentarily speechless. But he quickly composed himself and turned to the senior priests. "This is a farce. We cannot trust a test conducted by an unknown doctor." At that moment, Dr. Emile Grant, the man who had conducted the tests, stepped forward from the crowd. "I am Dr. Emile Grant. I examined the blood samples of these nuns, and I swear before God that they are innocent." A murmur of shock rippled through the priests and the gathered townspeople. Those who had thrown stones and cursed the nuns began to waver. A man whispered, "Could we have been wrong?" An elderly woman covered her face, her voice breaking. "I cursed them. I cursed innocent women." Another priest, Father Stephen, turned to Gregory, his gaze filled with suspicion. "Your Excellency, if you have nothing to hide, allow an independent medical council to verify the results." Gregory clenched his fists, though his face remained composed. "I have nothing to prove." "Then what are you afraid of?" Father John asked coldly. Gregory did not answer. He knew the tide was turning against him. At that moment, a voice rang out from the gate. "I can provide more evidence." All eyes turned toward the figure emerging from the shadows. A young priest stepped forward. It was Father Vincent. Gregory's eyes widened in shock, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "You," he growled. Vincent walked up, pulling out a small notebook and raising it high. "This is the record of a doctor who worked with Gregory. It clearly documents how he ordered hormones to be introduced into the monastery's food supply." A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. Mother Superior Mary felt her heart pounding in her chest. Gregory took a step back, his face turning pale. "You're lying," he roared. But Vincent stood firm. "Check the signature inside, and you will know the truth." Father Alphonse took the notebook, his eyes widening as he saw the official church seal. This is real evidence." Now, even the priests who had sided with Gregory could no longer hide their astonishment. Seeing everything collapse around him, Gregory knew he could not stay any longer. He turned and fled, trying to escape through the monastery's back gate. But it was too late. The very people who had once supported him were now enraged. A man stepped forward, blocking his path. "You will not escape so easily." A mob surrounded him. The same people who had once trusted him now looked at him as a traitor. A stone was hurled at him, then another. Gregory fell to the ground, shoved and cursed. The church's knights rushed in to intervene, but it was too late. Gregory had already lost all power. 2 days later, the High Church Council convened an emergency session. Before dozens of senior priests, in the presence of witnesses, and under the burning gaze of Mother Superior Mary and the nuns, Bishop Gregory was sentenced. You have disgraced the Church and betrayed your sacred vows. Gregory had nothing left to say. You are stripped of all titles and excommunicated from the Church permanently. He stood frozen, unable to believe he had lost everything. The priests turned their backs on him as if he no longer existed. As Gregory was led out of the monastery, an eerie sense of peace settled over St. Benedict Monastery. Mary looked up at the sky, silently thanking God. The nuns embraced one another, tears of relief streaming down their faces. For the first time in weeks of living in fear, they felt truly protected. But the most important task was still unfinished. The monastery had to be restored, and their honor fully redeemed. Their story was not over yet. Bishop Gregory was dragged out of St. Benedict Monastery, his eyes filled with panic and rage. He had never imagined himself in such a position, abandoned by the very church he had served, stripped of his titles, and cast out as a traitor. Outside, the gathered crowd had grown even larger, murmurs and whispers echoing through the monastery. A man pointed at Gregory, his voice seething with anger. He deceived us all. A woman shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. We believed in him, but he was nothing but a monster. Stones began to fly toward Gregory just as they once had toward the innocent nuns. He screamed in desperation. Stop! I am a bishop. I served God. But no one believed him anymore. The church's knights stepped in, shielding Gregory from the mob, not to save him, but simply to remove him as quickly as possible, to erase his influence forever. A senior priest delivered the final verdict. Bishop Gregory, you are stripped of all ranks and banned from entering any monastery across the entire territory. From this moment on, you are no longer a part of the church. Gregory collapsed to his knees, his lips trembling. No, this cannot be. But this was the truth. He had lost everything. As Gregory was led away, the monastery gates swung open, freed at last from his corrupt control. Mother Superior Mary stood at the entrance, looking at her nuns, the women who had endured so much pain, humiliation, and injustice. Today, they had been vindicated. Father John stepped forward, his voice deep and resolute. All the nuns of St. Benedict Monastery are innocent. They never betrayed their vows. Silence hung over the crowd, then a single clap broke through. An elderly woman, who had once cursed the nuns, now fell to her knees before Mother Superior. Forgive us, we were blind. Mary looked at her, then at the gathered people, before speaking gently. Truth has prevailed. But more importantly, we must all learn to forgive. The nuns embraced each other, their tears falling, but they were no longer tears of sorrow, but of joy and relief. 1 week later, the High Church Council convened a special assembly to deliver Gregory's final punishment. In the largest city nearby, where the church tribunal was headquartered, a secret trial was held. The senior priest's men who had once stood beside Gregory now turned their backs on him. A cardinal spoke solemnly. You abused your power to persecute the innocent, dishonored the church, and caused turmoil within the community. Gregory had no strength left to resist. He could neither run nor deny the truth anymore. The final verdict was pronounced. Gregory was permanently expelled from the clergy. All his possessions and privileges were stripped away. He was sentenced to exile in a remote monastery, where he would live out the rest of his days in solitude, without power or honor. As the sentence was read, Gregory lowered his head. He knew his life was over. He was no longer a powerful bishop, only a pitiful, broken man. Back at St. Benedict Monastery, the atmosphere had completely transformed. Mother Superior Mary walked into the great hall, where the nuns stood in a line, their eyes filled with reverence and love. Sister Beatrice ran forward, throwing her arms around Mary. We are home again. Mary smiled. For the first time in weeks, she truly felt at peace. God never abandoned us. Father John stood beside her, nodding. Truth always finds a way to prevail. The very people who had once condemned the monastery now returned with reverence. They came to confess, to pray, and most of all to seek forgiveness from the nuns they had wronged. A group of women brought flowers, laying them at the monastery gates as a symbol of remorse. A man turned to Mary and said, "If it weren't for you, the truth would have never been revealed. You are the light that guided us all." Mary smiled, but she knew this victory was not hers alone. It belonged to everyone who had fought for justice. Not long after, the monastery underwent a complete reform. Strict regulations were revised to ensure no one could manipulate it again. Honest and righteous priests were appointed to oversee its governance. The exiled nuns were welcomed back with full honor. Above all, St. Benedict Monastery was no longer a place shrouded in fear but a symbol of justice and unwavering faith. Mary looked up at the sky and whispered one final prayer. "We are home." 3 months after justice was served, St. Benedict Monastery had been completely transformed. Once a place overshadowed by darkness, fear, and oppression, it had now become a beacon of truth and resilience. The nuns returned to their normal lives, but none could ever forget the nightmare they had endured. Today, a special ceremony was held at the monastery, drawing hundreds of people from all over. A Thanksgiving Mass to welcome the nuns back, to declare that justice had triumphed, and to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. Mother Superior Mary stood before the altar, dressed in her most solemn habit. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked down at the hundreds gathered before her. The senior priests, the villagers, and the nuns who had been wrongfully exiled all stood together in unity. Father John stepped forward, his voice resonating through the church. "We are here today to thank God for guiding us back to the truth." A chorus of "Amen" echoed from the congregation. John turned to Mother Superior, his eyes filled with deep respect. "If not for your courage, none of us would be standing here today." Applause erupted, but Mary simply offered a humble smile. "It was our faith that brought the truth into the light." She turned to look at her nuns, the women who had once been treated as outcasts but now stood tall, their heads held high. Following Gregory's exile, the Church had implemented major reforms. A new oversight council was established to prevent anyone from abusing power as Gregory had. Honest priests like Father John, Father Alphonse, and Father Vincent were entrusted with protecting the monastery. The nuns were granted more autonomy, no longer subjected to oppressive control. Most importantly, their honor had been fully restored. Not everyone had the courage to face their past mistakes, but today, some did. The woman who had once thrown stones at the nuns stepped forward, her eyes red with tears. She knelt, her voice trembling. "Please, forgive us." Sister Beatrice looked at her, remembering that terrible day when she and her sisters were cast out like criminals. She bit her lip but then turned to Mother Superior, waiting for her response. Mary stepped forward, placing a hand on the woman's shoulder. "God teaches us to forgive. Learn from your mistakes, and never again let evil guide your heart." The woman broke down in tears, while others in the crowd bowed their heads in deep remorse. The story of the nuns' resilience spread far beyond St. Benedict Monastery. It echoed throughout America. People from distant places came to the monastery, seeking truth, learning about courage, and understanding justice. The monastery was no longer just a place for nuns, it had become a beacon of light, a sanctuary where people could come to pray, to seek hope, and to find righteousness. With the Church's support, the once exiled nuns were not only welcomed back but also given compensation for their suffering. They were publicly recognized as innocent and allowed to continue serving God without fear or oppression. The more fragile ones, like Sister Helen, received mental and physical care after enduring months of trauma. Mother Superior Mary dedicated a part of the monastery to helping oppressed women, providing them with a safe haven. From a place that had nearly fallen into ruin, St. Benedict Monastery had risen stronger than ever. Though no one spoke of Gregory openly anymore, whispers about him still spread. In a remote monastery deep in the mountains, Gregory now lived in isolation. No power. No honor. He was no longer a bishop. There were no sycophants surrounding him, no respect left for him. Day after day, he sat alone, haunted by memories of his once glorious past, now a nightmare he could never escape. He had lost everything. And no one cared about him anymore. As the sun set over St. Benedict Monastery, it cast a golden glow upon the ancient stone walls. The nuns gathered to pray not in sorrow, not in fear but in gratitude. Mother Superior Mary looked up at the sky, her heart lighter than ever. We have overcome everything. Father John stepped beside her, nodding. And St. Benedict Monastery will forever be a symbol of justice. They looked at each other, knowing that this battle had been about more than just protecting a monastery. It had been a fight for righteousness, for truth, for unwavering faith. The sky darkened, but this time, it was not the darkness of fear, only the peaceful embrace of night after a just battle. St. Benedict Monastery had been reborn. And justice had prevailed. The story of St. Benedict Monastery stands as undeniable proof that truth and justice will always triumph no matter the obstacles, no matter the injustice. It teaches us that unwavering faith, courage, and unity can help people overcome even the most oppressive forces. At the same time, it serves as a stark warning about the consequences of power corrupted, proving that those who commit evil will never escape judgment. And finally, it reminds us of the power of forgiveness, allowing society to move forward in the light of truth.